This podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence, and in this series, we are exploring coaching outdoors and how being outdoors is good, if not vital, for our well-being. I'm talking to thought leaders and individuals who share their passion for coaching as they share their philosophy, research and practices with you. Our aim is to inspire you to unlock the potential of coaching when combined with being in nature and outdoors. My guest today is the founder of the Nature Coaching Academy, and today she will be sharing her journey from management roles in the corporate world to becoming a coaching with nature practitioner and trainer. She is a professional certified coach, and today she is going to share with us her experience of Ecosomatic Coaching and how she teaches to coach in deep synergy with body and nature. As a two-time TEDx speaker on the power of nature for coaching and well-being, she has worked with over 30,000 people since the year 2000 and trained over 70 coaches in the last 5 years. So I'm delighted to introduce to you today, Diana Tedoldi. So Diana, a very warm welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited for this and very grateful. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
So let's begin at the beginning. I mean, you've got extensive experience working with nature and coaching and working with folks outdoors. So I'm curious to understand a little bit of your backstory and why coaching outdoors for you, Diana.
Coaching outdoors for me is really the chance to reweave ourselves into the fabric of the natural world. But let me say that usually I prefer to say coaching with nature or nature coaching, because coaching outdoors just seems to take a coaching conversation outdoors and the same conversation that we would have indoors, just outdoors. And honestly, my experience is that it's not like that, because when I coach in synergy with nature, nature is a part of the session, is a part of the conversation. So I like to say that nature is my co-coach. And there are, practices and ways to include nature in the conversation and just not being there as if it's just a mere container or a background of a human experience. So I call it nature coaching because of this, because of nature as co-coach, and also because my deeper intent is to give subjectivity back to nature. Nature for me is also, is a particular term. It's a word that can have many definitions. For me, it's an inclusive term that includes everything that is about our planet, life on the planet, so plants, animals, insects, the smallest fungi, other microorganisms, the ecosystems. Nature is all of that for me, and ourselves. We all are part of nature as well, especially when we reconnect with our bodies, we can reconnect with this awareness that we belong to this wider network of living beings. And so this leads to my coaching approach, which I define ecosomatic. Eco, because oikos from ancient Greek, is the natural world, our home, Gaia, the planet, as a living, self-regulating, autopoietic being. And so ecosomatic, eco is this, so it's the reconnection to Gaia, to our planet, and somatic, because the word soma, again, in ancient Greek, includes everything as a word. It is another inclusive term that talks about our body, our mind, our heart, soul, whatever you may call this invisible part of ourselves that makes us ourselves. So everything we are is embodied, and at least I never saw a human being without a body. Not sure about you, but for me this is the experience. So ecosomatic means reconnecting with our bodies to reconnect with the planet and nature's intelligence and the ecosystemic intelligence. And this is what can be included in a coaching session in terms of tools or approaches or. So this is how I support my clients, enabling this deeper conversation, which is not just with me, the human coach, but also with a with a natural coach, which is everything of nature that we have around us when we coach outdoors. But this can also happen when I coach with body indoors, for example, online. So also because all this aspect of online coaching is, I would have to say that most conversations I have today are online. Only saying coaching outdoors, it's like exclusive of how nature can be part of the conversation also online. And this opens, for example, the way to me being indoors with my client, being outdoors in nature, and me supporting the person to connect with nature around themselves, or both of us indoors, online, with some aspect of nature with us, around us, outside, just outside the window. Plants, animals in the house as well are often included in the conversation, sometimes leading to very interesting insights. So this is why I prefer not to use coaching outdoors, because then it would just exclude other very creative opportunities that we have, and that, in my experience, are now the norm, like coaching online. So not sure if I answered you.
Oh, it's a lovely answer. And you've really got me thinking there about the fact that I could see now the restrictions in when we're talking about coaching outdoors. We're just taking coaching outdoors. And what I'm hearing there is when we're talking about coaching with nature, coaching with the whole, to your point there about ecosomatic coaching. And I'd love to get into that with you in terms of learning more about what that means to you and what that is and how people can benefit from that approach. All of a sudden it opens up and we're looking at lots of different aspects to what we're really talking about here. And I wonder if, like, now I'm thinking of coaching outdoors is almost the entry point for some, perhaps. And that's perhaps some of your experience too. So let's talk a little bit more at this point about the ecosomatic side. I'd still love to learn more about your own connection, but we'll come back to that. But I'm very curious in terms of, you mentioned this all-inclusive, you talk about ecosystems and the fact that we're all connected to the whole and we're all one and we're all connected in that way. So talk to me more about that, Diana, and what that means to you and what you understand about that approach.
So ecosomatic coaching for me is about developing a felt sense of nature connectedness that is always there, because we are always nature. We always are nature connected. It's just that for, in my opinion, mysterious reasons, we just got to a place where we don't feel that so much. So it's like human species is somewhere above nature or better than nature or just in another place. So there is like this illusion that we don't belong, while it would be impossible not to belong. So it's about reconnecting, and the body is the place where this reconnection, in my experience, happens. I am also a dance therapist. Beside being a professional certified coach and having a coaching school, my origin, even as I was getting my master's degree, I was also attending this 3 years professional course to become a dance therapist. A job title I never used, in fact, but it has become the basis of this deeper connection with everything that is my body. And for me, the body is like an organ of sense, also an organ of sense making. It's the place where we enact our decisions. It's the place where we get information from the outer world and from the inner world. So for me, this connection from nature goes hand in hand with disconnecting from our bodies. So the same attitude, in my experience, we have towards our bodies, we have towards nature. So this is why, for me, reconnecting with nature includes necessarily reconnecting with our bodies. And the way I facilitate that mainly is through, we would say, mindfulness. I'd rather call it contemplative practices. So any practice that brings our mind back to our bodies. And this is often the way I start coaching conversations, just with a 1 minute or most often 5 minutes, self-centering. Let's get back to our bodies. Let's remember that we are a body. We don't have a body. let's reconnect with our breathing. Let's do 5 minutes of stretching, self-directed stretching, no pattern or, that we have learned anywhere in yoga, at sports or... So it's just a way to reconnect here, refund ourselves here. And when we begin a coaching conversation like that, the whole coaching conversation gets a different speed. It's like a different kind of clarity, inner clarity emerges as we empty our minds and just make space for this deeper presence and deep listening to self. And then from there, the goal of the session is clearer, and we get a lot of information from our bodies as well. What is changing in my breathing as I talk about this problem? What is my body telling me about the issue I'm sharing with my coach? And so for me, the coach is an enabler of a deeper listening of the embodied intelligence that we all have, and that is very close to our inner compass. And there's a lot of research also demonstrating all this that I'm talking about, which came from my direct experience, as I've been practicing this on my own for decades so far, since the early 2000s. So this comes from my experience. And then I'm studying a lot of researches that say, Diana, what you've been practicing works. Yeah, you were somehow right doing that. So it's like a kind of funny that we need the validation of science, but okay, better have it than not for many people. Yeah, so this is a little bit about the background that led to this ecosomatic wording.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? To your earlier point about, I think we just know whether stuff works or not. And it's really interesting to have the science, or coming back to your earlier point there about how we've managed to separate ourselves. And it's almost that same process is having to validate some of what you already know there, Diana. So I'm amused by those connections there, and also the relationship between all of those things. And it's interesting how we get ourselves caught up with all of this stuff when sometimes the answers could be quite simple. And I was thinking there about what you were saying about the various different patterns that we get caught up in. And I really like your idea of stretching without any sort of prescribed direction, because again, that's almost, if we were to follow that, we're getting caught up in our own thinking again, and we're not actually moving towards the place that you're describing, which is where we're coming back into ourselves and back into our body.
Yes, let me add a little piece on this. This is like one of the super simplest practices that we offer, the stretching piece. And some of my students say that when they completed the course with me, they become also stretching ninjas, because it's like the foundation of everything is let's get back into our body, let's stretch a little bit. And I would like to offer this simple exercise to the listeners to this podcast, which is just this. In this very moment, just ask your body, what do you need? What do you need to open, expand, enlarge, soften, release? And if you listen in any given moment, your body can tell you, yes, please open there. Take some breathing there, or stretch there. So this for me is about reconnecting with our embodied intelligence. Your body knows, just listen to it. And sometimes when I ask, for example, in trainings or with groups, people to just follow their need to stretch, what they need to stretch, I see them doing so complicated things that it's evident that they learned it somewhere at, soccer ball training in the evening, or yoga, or no. That's the mind imposing patterns to the body. Just listen to the lived essence, lived presence of your body, and the answers are there. And when we do that, so this is an embodied, let's say, it's the embodied piece of reconnecting also with the intelligence of the body. And so that when that path is clear, we can use that in the coaching conversation as well. So, for example, we are discussing a certain topic, and I may ask the person, okay, if you were to place this topic, this question, this issue in your body, where is its house? Where would you place it? And then from there, I often ask, okay, do you feel that any other part of your body has a resource or wants to contribute to you looking at this topic? And so there is this kind of moving dialogue between parts, like, okay, yes, I sense that this topic has a house in the stomach. What's happening in your stomach? What is your stomach doing as you reflect on this? And which other part of your body wants to contribute? Or, for example, the hands. Okay, what do the hands have to say? And then often this dialogue moves across the body, and then also, I don't know, the knees want to say something, or so it's really like shifting the place from which we look at our topics into a deeper connection with ourselves. So that's the somatic piece. And then there is the eco piece, which is including natural aspects in the conversation. So I'm practicing this a lot, and I have, of course, the listeners will not be able to see my background, but I have chosen some natural pictures for my online nature connected sessions, and often I ask my clients to look at the pictures in the background and see if there is any picture that has an energy that the person is looking for as they are looking for solutions or ideas. And then I just invite for a moment of connection with that image and the sense of, I don't know, uplifting or release or anything that they perceive in that. And then what's the relationship with all these and your topic? Or this is, again, listeners can't see, but I'm just picking a plant beside me. This is my indoor co-coach of all times, and it's a plant, very green, very very flourishing, I would say. And often I just pick it and ask my clients, what do you think this plant has listened to so far? What is she seeing of you? What would be her advice for you? And so again, this is just a way to, and thank you, by the way, this is just a way to enter into different perspectives in a creative way. And it's not really about using the plant, okay, to provide insight. It's about creating a space to just look at the plant and receive something from her. So it's not just a mental inspiration. If we have worked well during the session, the idea, the insight emerges from a place of shared presence, shared connection, and even if online, I know it may sound odd or strange or magic, it's not really anything of that. It's just how relationships work. We are establishing a connection. I'm in Italy, you are in the UK, I think. And we are in relationship, and this relationship is doing something. So the same can happen if I take myself off the video and I substitute it with the plant. What's the difference? This is part of my deep intent to give subjectivity back to nature. It's not just a place of a thing for inspiration, because it's not a thing. It's a living being, and she's listening. And it's demonstrated that plants listen without ears, see without eyes, feel at least 10 more things than our senses, our human senses can do. They're like a lab, and they are perfectly aware of anything happening in the environment around them. So there is intelligence in plants. Luckily, science is saying yes. And we say, oh, amazing. It should be normal, but it's amazing. And just like plants, the mountains have subjectivity. The river has a subjectivity. And so all this process is not just in favor of the outcomes of the coaching conversation, in my experience and in my deeper intent. It's also about coming to a place where we acknowledge that we are not alone on the planet, that we are all interconnected, that we have a responsibility as a species, and that there are ideas out there, if only we could mimic them. If only we could really catch the learnings and transfer them into our human systems. I think that's the solution to any problem that we have today, because nature has solved any problem that we have over 3.8 billion years of life evolution on Earth. So it's just a matter of looking out there, reconnecting, mimicking, and reestablishing a balance. The practices that I teach are really super, super easy. I don't teach, complex kata sequences or postures. No, it's just stay there, listen, and that's it. I mean, it's a bit more than that, but in essence, it's really taking away stuff from our minds so that somebody can communicate with us. So it's really simple. One thing I wish I could say was that sometimes we just need to know, to be validated that it's okay to do that. It makes sense. It's not just you're not crazy, because this is how I felt for 20 years. Like, I'm alone. It's about me. I cannot do any of these because it just doesn't make sense. It's just for me. And it's not true, because it works for so many people. So we just need a little bit more self-trust and, to see, okay, if she does it, I can do it too. Yes. We all can do it. We all need to do it. And it's okay to find your ways. What I teach are the ways that I found. But what I like always to say is that I don't teach exercises or things that you have to replicate. I teach principles that then you can apply to your own adventures, to your creativity, your background, your knowledge, whatever. So it's principles that work transculturally. Because that's where they come from. And my experience is that when we plug into nature, we all find the same things.
That's lovely, Diana. There's so many thoughts going through my mind based on what you're kindly sharing with us there. What other ways do you work with people in this way? That's what I'm curious about. Mm-hmm. What other examples can you offer us in terms of, I'm fascinated by this interconnectedness that you described there. And just recently, actually, I can't see it at the moment, but I had a plant here just over in a space in the corner of this room, which is where one of my sons sort of spends time at a desk doing his own thing. And this same plant was actually in an office in the city where I had it there, and it looked very grey and very sorry. So I brought it home just to give it some nurturing. And within days of it being on that desk, it really came to life. And there was just really deep greens. And for me, it was a remarkable transformation. I was surprised at just the change in its shape and colour, which speaks very much to what you're describing there, Diana. So I have very, very first-hand recent experience of some of what you're describing there. But I'm super curious to learn more about the other examples of the ways that you work with people in this way, and some of the shifts that you've perhaps witnessed. Or I'm not necessarily looking for sort of wow, groundbreaking examples. I'm just curious as to the different types of ways that maybe have surprised you in how nature has shown up as part of a coaching conversation that's allowed you and perhaps those you are working with to explore a new direction.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, like every conversation would have a case and I could mention it. So let's say that I have like a double, perhaps triple or quadruple profession, but let's limit this to coaching. So mainly I coach individuals or teams. So examples can come from both these main areas of my work. Let me start with the team example, and then we can go to one or two or three or more examples from my individual coaching practice. I always like to mention this example because it's so nice, and it's also one of my earliest experiments, I have to say, with teams. It was a few years ago. Perhaps immediately after the reopening of work after the pandemic. So when teams got back together again and working together after almost a year of working in teams outdoors was almost forbidden in Italy, and it was so complicated that I didn't do that for some months at least. And this was a group of about 25 people, if I don't go wrong. And they were doing a whole day with me, working on their commitment for sustainable development in their company. So it was a team working in the sustainability development area of their company, which is an energy company, very famous in Italy. And so we were doing lots of, games to understand nature's logics and try to transfer them in their work organization. And then the final piece was like identifying a logo that could represent a visual shape for their commitment as a team. And so they invented this shape. I had them realize it, drawing with a certain tool, and then in the space with ropes. And at that point, it was a very interesting shape. And then I asked them, okay, now let's do this shape around. We were in a magnificent property near the Alps with many ancient trees, like 100 or 200 or 300 years old, oaks and similar trees. And so I asked them, okay, now let's find a way to include this tree in your logo as well. It was like a shape that they were designing, holding ropes in the air. And so they just spread around this tree, magnificent tree. It was the end of the day. And at a certain point, I just invited them to, okay, now you are around this tree, and this tree is looking at you. So this for me is the piece where I reverse the perspective. This tree is looking at you, has seen you working all day long, and now has an idea about you, your commitment, what you will be doing, your next steps after this workshop, has expectations, and perhaps also has a message. And in that moment, when I said this tree is looking at you, you could feel the air going like, oh yes, really? Like thickening. The air was thickening, and I could sense, really, and everybody could sense it. And it's one of the most remarkable things that they still remember when we meet. They sometimes go there to this memory. And then I just asked, okay, perhaps this tree has a question for you or has a message for you. And what is it? Just take some time to breathe, sense the roots of this tree underneath your feet, and sense the branches. And you perhaps can notice some aspects of this tree that capture your attention and curiosity. What is this message? What is this question? Write it down. And then we shared. And then we just placed the ropes down on the trees, the soil around the tree. And the messages just made perfect sense from a sustainable perspective. It was really like an invitation to commit and persevere and remember good things for us humans, remember to care, remember that we are not the only ones on the planet, and so on. So this left a mark, and it was foundational to the development of their motivation and to many other experiences that they did after that to follow the line. So this is an example, and in these lines of this example, I have many other. But I picked this because it was like the first experience for me with this kind of approach with teams. And then from individual practice, it's hard to choose. I can perhaps mention 3 different cases so that there is a sense of different ways that nature can contribute to a coaching journey. So, okay, for me, the best is always when I can coach with me and the client actually together outdoors. Okay, that changes everything because we are there sharing that space of listening, of silence most of the times. So this experience is again, perhaps this is pre-COVID. Yeah, I'm sure about this is pre-COVID. And there is a place that I call my office, even though it's a public space, but it's something that I have a deep relationship with, a place that I have a deep relationship with, and it's along the river Adda, which is part of my ecological family. I really have a strong relationship with that. And one thing I suggest is that if you want to have coaching conversation outdoors, you take your clients to places that are part of your ecological family, meaning that you have a relationship with them. You know them in most of the season or every season, like it should be, in every time of the day, so that you know what happens there over the course of the day in different seasons. And also you have a relationship because the place contributes to the conversation. Just like, it's a different conversation between me and you that meet after knowing each other for such a small time, and wonder the difference with my best friend who I know since 20 years ago. So the quality of the conversation, of course, is different, just like between human beings. So I suggest finding a place and become a friend of it, and get to know each other before you take there somebody, and introduce this person to your new ecological friend or old ecological friend. And also I suggest having a practice with that place of self-coaching with that place. Like, I can provide examples later so that people can start self-coaching with nature before coaching others with nature. That, in my experience, this is my experience. I first did it on my own for 10 years, then started exploring with other people, and then found my academy school after 2 decades of personal exploration. So this is my path, and it's, of course, what I suggest because it seems most logical. So again, going back, I'm in the river with this. This is an executive from a famous retail firm. And I'm coaching him since I think we first did at least 5 sessions online, until I finally decided, since there was something that was blocked, I just couldn't unblock it online. I don't know what was happening. And I said, okay, dear, I propose that we meet outdoors. How is it for you? And he said, yes, I'm very curious. So he came, and all the subsequent sessions were outdoors in that place. We did some centering practice, like I described, some stretching, integrating also the breath of this place in the practice. And then I asked them to identify a natural being in that place that made him willing to connect a little deeper. So he found a tree nearby. Don't remember exactly the type of tree that was there. And so I just invited him to look at the tree and really absorb the image of the tree in his sensibility, becoming somehow the tree he was contemplating. All this was in silence. I was guiding, in fact, which is not really a coaching word, but for me, this kind of practice needs a bit of guidance. And of course, I always propose it in partnership. So if the client says no, of course, it's fine, and I don't proceed. But in this case, he was very curious to also learn some of this, so it was okay, and it was part of the agreement. So I was absorbing the image, was observing how he made it, how this tree was making him breathe slower, and just enabled very comfortable sensations within his body. And then, again, I invited him to acknowledge that not only he was looking at the tree, but the tree was looking back at him. And what was the tree witnessing of him, his progress over the past 5 sessions, his questions, his challenges, and what could he get in terms of other perspective from this tree. And all this was in silence. Usually I say, okay, you stay in this until it's okay for you. When it's okay, when you get something, you just say, okay, and I know I can move forward. So as he was there, I could see a tear coming down the eye, but still he didn't say, okay. So I just was there behind his shoulder. So I was not inside and just respecting his time. And after some minutes, he said, okay. So I just invited him to find a way to close this connection, and if he felt the need to express gratefulness or anything before we could go back to the conversation. So he did, and then, of course, the rest of the conversation was, what did you get from this? And the insights he got from this other perspective, and somehow something that was blocked shifted. So this is an example of many others in the same line. I did that with the river, with a mountain, with the grass, with the sky lying on the ground. The nice thing, it really, for me, it's so creative because you can co-create with the client everything in the moment. Like, okay, what is it that you really need now in terms of posture, movement, or to make a shift in this conversation? What is the next step now that you need to reset your body and get ready for the next 30 minutes of conversation? And so sometimes the client says, I just need to lie down a little bit. Okay, let's do it. So I do it. I do whatever the client says at that point. So if he wants to lie down, I ask, is it okay for you if I lie down as well, or you prefer me? And usually the answer is, do whatever you want. I don't care. Just let me do my thing and organize yourself. And so in that occasion that I'm remembering, I was just lying on the ground a little bit away so that he had his space. Again, it was a man. And then I asked if he needed any kind of guidance or was just a self-directed moment. He said, no, I'm taking care of this moment, just need 5 minutes. And first he was with eyes closed, then opened the eyes. And it was a moment with lots of wind up in the atmosphere. So the clouds were going so fast, a little faster than usual. And in that moment, I noticed that I just didn't have to contribute in any way to that moment. I just allowed the process to unfold. Again, this was like a second time outdoors with this client, perhaps like around the 7th session, after other sessions indoors in the office, in the headquarters. And then again, this moving of the clouds was doing something to him. So it's not about mental inspiration. It's about an embodied effect of contemplating, of creating space for nature to do something inside of us. Sometimes clients say, I noticed that something was moving inside my body, like releasing the stomach, or more relaxation in the legs, or a release in this area, in the heart area. So body things happen as we just let nature do something to us. So this is something that is interesting. Again, this is another example from an outdoor session. Do I still have time for an online coaching example?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. Is this useful?
It's wonderful, Diana. There are so many things springing to mind, but I'll allow you to share the example, and I'll perhaps share some thoughts with you afterwards. So, yeah.
Okay. Just 2 more examples, very different. So,
please. Yeah.
Thank you. I tend to speak a lot. I'm Italian, by the way. So in any case, just interrupt me and say, Diana, break out. Okay. Okay, so another example is from an online session where I was outdoors. It was late autumn, by the way, so it was a little bit chill as well. And the client was outdoors in her garden while I was in a small park near my house here. We had agreed that we had, this was like the 3rd session. This was all a nature-connected journey. So both online, the previous sessions were like that, like online, but including nature and body in the conversation. So pure ecosomatic coaching sessions. And then that session was about time management for this person. And she chose to be in her family garden. So we were talking about time and the stress she felt and the lots of stuff that she has to feel inside the daily schedule and the anxiety of losing time, not pursuing the big project of her heart that she really wanted to dedicate time to, but she was so overwhelmed with all the rest of ongoing stuff, like ordinary stuff in 90% of the conversation I today have as a coach. So it was like all this fast speaking and a sense of closing in the mind and the mindset. So I said, okay, how would it be for you to weave into your words some breathing or create a space of, releasing all the energy that you're placing in your words? So she said yes. She immediately did like, yes, thank you for reminding me that. So I just asked her what did she need in that moment from a body perspective. And she said just a moment of silence. So she took some seconds, like, I don't know, less than a minute, to readjust, find a comfortable position where she was. And then I asked her, okay, if you were to find a time coach in your place, who would it be? Who has something for you in terms of, I don't know, today? Yeah, I'm not sure I even asked her about the time coach. I perhaps just asked her to look around. So in a more, because sometimes, the input is not about that topic. It's about something else that impacts that topic. So it was a more open question. And she looked around and she found a tree. Again, I don't remember the name of that tree. And that tree was part of her child memories since a long time. And she remembered that tree was always the last one to flower at spring. But then when it was flowering, it was just magnificent. And so I asked, what is the connection between this thing you're saying and this tree and the topic of this session? And she said, I think that the key thing for me is to allow myself to have my own time. So it's my own time, my own way to live time, to take time, to organize time. It's my way. So I need to validate myself in having my time, my personal way to live time. And that was like lifting a shadow. And that created a change also in some actions that she was working on that I told her, for me, it was a bit too much. But she said, no, I can make it. And then again, it was, okay, I want to have a different pace also in my action plan. So this led to a completely different speed in her journey, her coaching journey, and the way she was handling this emergence of a new profession that she was working on. So this is an example where I wasn't with the person in nature, she was, and she found the resources there. And then, of course, that was part of her personal practices to keep the connection with that motivation, that insight. The beauty of working with nature is that then you are not alone anymore in keeping up with your commitments, because you have another, which is not the coach, another being to refer to. It's like a body. It's a natural body, and it has no less importance than a coach, in my experience. So one thing I also love about coaching with nature is that it's empowering for people to set up their own practices, which they can do on their own, in parallel or even after the coaching journey has ended. So it's really empowering, and it's a way to reconnect with our inner compass that's always there. And that nature enables. And the way nature does that, science says, it's because nature connectedness is positively correlated with emotional regulation. So when we connect with nature, our ability to regulate emotions improves. And this leads to modulation of stress, anxiety, depression symptoms as well. And this leads to a better perceived quality of life and many other, like happiness also. And this is all evidence-based. There are so many resources out there demonstrating this. And again, it's obvious that we have evolved out of a deep synergy with nature. So being detached from her is no good for our mental health and our physical health. So for me, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, there's so much in there that intuitively rings true for me in what you're saying there, Diana. And thank you for sharing those lovely examples with us. I think that gives a real insight as to, well, perhaps a glimpse as to what it is that you actually do in the world with others. But it also very insightful in terms of just how working with nature in that way can transform somebody's energy or the state that they find themselves in when they approach you. I want to come back to something that you mentioned earlier, which I thought was probably quite important for our listener. You mentioned about developing a practice or developing a relationship with your surroundings first before working with other people in that. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that specifically? I'm really curious to learn more about how you've done that and why that's also really important before you bring others into that same space. I sense there's something very important about that.
Absolutely. At least this is what I know. So my experience is that first I practiced on my own. So it was like for 10 years approximately. Yes. And the way I started that is because I've been a manager in the corporate environment for almost 2 decades. And so I had a very fast-paced life and lots of expectations on my own from myself and also from the company. I've been a communication manager first, then organizational development manager, HR training manager at the end, where I could just give to the company like two days per week. But especially in the early years, I was doing a lot because I needed to prove myself, because I needed to feel effective, so all the stuff that I think most of the people when they start working need to do. And so that was the game for me. So for me, rebalancing all those runs during the day when I left the office was essential to keep my identity and personal balance. And the way I did that was running in the countryside and then dedicating myself for 10 years meditational practice that I have evolved in synergy with my apple tree in my garden. So after running for 1 hour, I was there for half an hour, just releasing everything. Taking, again, the mind back to my body back into my mind. And I call this practice arborea, which in Latin means of the trees. And for me, it's about entering the breathing of the tree. And one key aspect of contemplative practices is that you do the practice for doing the practice, not for any other goal. So you don't need, okay, now I do this because I want to learn how to better regulate my emotions. No, you do it because it's good to do it. And then the effects come. But that was just a moment of no goals, no expectations, just doing that because it felt so good in the mind, in the body, and it just led myself to a state which then my students always refer, which is being completely present and listening. And I think that the listening that I bring to the coaching sessions comes from that practice. And the presence that I bring to any experience I lead comes from that practice. So learning to be in full presence and full listening with the tree is easier than with humans because you have less dynamics, and it's a free space, it's a neutral space, and the tree will always love you, or at least stay there. If not love you, at least will remain there, even if you come with pimples or a little fat around, the tree is there and will not run away. So you are always okay with the tree, and this is good. And so as I was doing this practice, which, by the way, is super easy and super simple, and anybody can do it, come to a tree of your preference that feels like a good match for you, and find a way to create a physical connection. It can be trunk against trunk, the head, the forehead against a branch, or the arm along the trunk. So find a way to establish a connection, and then make it needs to be comfortable and pleasant, because otherwise it doesn't work, because pleasure opens life inside our bodies. So you need to find a comfortable position in physical contact with that tree, and then stay there, and then sense when it's time to move into another feel-good position in relationship with the tree. And then it's like you start moving, you give yourself the intention to start moving at the pace that is good for the tree in that moment. And sometimes I also ask the tree how he wants or she wants me to move. Okay, so this is another way to place my action center outside of me. So usually I do this after like 10 minutes I have arrived, and some burden in my head has lifted. And then it's all about just staying there and creating these feel-good positions that release tensions in your body. Your body is adjusting. It's like an acupuncture, in my experience. It's like an acupuncture session. You feel really the flows moving in your body. And it's like plugging into the awareness of nature for me in that moment. So I do it until it feels okay. In winter, it's faster because it's colder. So it lasts about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But in any other season, 30. I even sometimes fall asleep when I'm so tired. I come there and I just fall asleep. And my apple tree is really comfortable because the branches are organized in such a way that it's really comfortable to stay in there. And then in those moments, at the end of those moments, I really feel like I'm completely realigned and centered. And it's in those moments that the insight to solve that problem emerges. The solution or the creative idea that I was looking after for days, or the way to solve a conflict, emerges in that moment without even looking for it. And at the same time, I see in perspective all the troubles of the day or the worries. It's just I find myself in a different place. And that's the good place for decision making, for just being a good human and having the right ideas aligned with the ecosystemic intelligence. So this is what I practice. And then for 10 years. And then in 2009, I said myself, I still was working part-time, perhaps again 4 days per week in the company. I was starting to erode my days in there. And then in 2009, I said, okay, this thing is so powerful. It is so good. How can I check if it's transferable to other people as well? So in 2009, July, I had my first experience with a group of dancers, which were the dancers that I was dancing with. And I said, okay, guys, come to my garden. I have some things to offer and to propose, and I want to see if it works for somebody else beyond me. And the experiment was super successful. It was an amazing experience. My websites are full of photos from that experience. It was really incredible. And so I said, okay, how can I make this? Because, the dancers are all funny people. So it was somehow easy. Okay. And then I said, how can I bring this into the corporate world? And at the time, I was not a coach yet. So I was caressing the idea to become a coach. I was mainly a trainer in my work outside of the company, where I was working as a manager. And I was evolving my freelance career as a facilitator, trainer, and mainly working as a management system developer for other companies. So it was really a hard work. My nickname in the company was Hammer. Okay, amazing. And I really regret it, but that was my nickname because I was always spot on, always reminding everybody the schedule and everything. So from the hammer to the trees, the journey is very long, but I made it. And so after a few years, I took my coaching course because I said, okay, the label coaching is perfect. When I discovered coaching, I said, okay, this is the most fantastic profession in the world because it's really all about empowering and letting people enter a space of freedom, creativity, reconnecting with our inner powers. So it was perfectly aligned with my personal growth journey. So I said, yes, coaching works, is beautiful, is a nice label because companies understand what it is. So then again, I started 10 more years of research to find how to bridge all those strange things with nature, silence, slowness, which were like the opposite of any corporate life, and the work with companies, until it seemed like I found a way to create a bridge between these two me, in fact. So it was also a journey of reconnecting with my different souls. Okay, there was corporate Diana and there was nature Diana of the trees, and I needed to feel whole and stop splitting my lives like that because it was not good for me. And so then again, 10 years of research with groups, experimentations, small things like the ones I told you before with that team around the tree, until I finally founded the Nature Coaching Academy. again, to test these ideas and these approaches applied to coaching conversations like I had explored over the past years. And then again, what today the Nature Coaching Academy is again something very different than when I started, because then I learned through teaching, and we co-created with all the students all the things that now I can sense are correctly organized for the moment, because every year brings new learnings. And when you work with nature, you're working with a never-ending source of learning. So I cannot say that what the Nature Coaching Academy is today will be the same. I'm sure it will not in 5 years. And what is emerging now is really this accent in giving subjectivity back to nature. She wants to contribute somehow, or at least it's good for us to think that. And so it's really about giving life back to everything around us. And my purpose would be, my deeper intent for the coming 10 years in my life. So I'm 50 now. I would really like in 10 years from now to have nature sitting as a stakeholder at any board, decision-making table, institution, anywhere. Decisions are taken that impact the health, happiness, and well-being of the natural world. I want a representative of nature to sit there and contribute to that decision. This would be my dream and my commitment. And so I have to find, again, to empower my students in that line as well, so that we can really grow the coaching professions to accompany the journey towards regeneration and sustainability. So this can be, perhaps, who knows, we'll see, the next step of what I'm trying to do.
There's so much in there that's really, really useful. And I think the thing that's really surprising, perhaps not surprising me, but is really reaffirming, actually, there's so much creativity in the work that you do. I love this journey that you've just described there. Well, the two journeys, one, your own journey there, and it's fascinating to hear where you've come from. I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to the journey that you've been on. We've all got our own unique journeys, but I think so many people are coming from a corporate background and looking for more out of life, and that seems to encompass our surroundings and the natural world more and more these days from what I'm seeing. But I love the journey that you also described in terms of your relationship to nature and how you use it to center yourself. And you very thoughtfully answered my question there, I felt, in terms of, I think something that we all aspire to in coaching is acceptance and non-judgment, and to ask the tree, for his or her perspective, and to be able to center ourselves and realign ourselves in the way that you described there. I could see how valuable that would be to then working with somebody else in that same environment and creating that opportunity for insight and the ability to make good decisions. There's just so much in there that you were describing that I felt was really useful. I'm very conscious of our time, our limited time now together today in our conversation. And I feel we've explored so much, but I just feel there's so much more to explore as well. You're a very well regarded practitioner in this space. Your name has come up quite a number of times in preparation for putting this series together, but also during the series that's been recorded so far. So I'm curious, just as we begin to wrap up, are there any resources that you might wish to recommend to our listener that might be a good starting place for them to learn more about what you've been sharing with us today?
My websites are under redesign, but actually some outdated stuff is there. But one resource, and it's 3 resources actually, are downloadable from my website, and it's 2 audio-guided practices. One for a sitting contemplative practice in synergy with nature, and another one is a walking practice in synergy with nature. I call it biophilic walking, because it's not just a meditational walk, it's a walk where you feel yourself walking with nature, and it's another space for deeply reconnecting. So those 2 audio-guided files with my voice are a resource. And also there is a PDF file with some, again, outdated, because over the past 5 years, I have found so much more evidence-based researches that I didn't mention in that file. So it's all under redesign. But if people follow or subscribe to the newsletter, of course, they will receive the updates as I release them over the summer. So this is for what they can get for free. The programs and everything is in the website. And then it's 2 workshops. I'm leading 2 workshops at Henley Business School on the 12th of July in the UK. So Henley Business School is doing this Coaching Outdoors Day live event. And it's about 8 of us, coaches from UK, Italy, and even beyond this, from other places in Europe. And we will be sharing workshops. So it's a full day with a keynote from Jonathan Passmore as well, and many other amazing coaches who are exploring and experimenting in this field of the relationship between coaching and nature. And then what else? The Ecosomatic Coaching training, the first online edition in English, because so far all my courses have been in Italian for many different reasons, including the pandemic, who's misplaced all my plans for development of the Nature Coaching Academy. So I'm just recovering now after 4 years of disruption of my plans, let's say. And we also plan to release the Nature Coaching Cards, which will be a deck of coaching cards where we get to know the 8 natural archetypes, which are the foundation of our framework. And for every archetype, we have a selection of 8 natural coaches with all their wisdom. And so that can be fun to integrate in a session. So all this is coming over the year. So I'm talking about 2024. So hopefully people is listening to that before the end of the year and can keep in touch.
That's lovely, Diana. And I'll ask for your connection details in just a moment. So my final question to you today, what's inspired you in the last 7 days?
I need to mention yesterday evening because, 2 things. I start from yesterday evening because it was the first river bathing of the season, because it's been a terrible bad weather over the past 3 months. So luckily, finally, I went to have my first river bath with the River Adda near my house, 15 minutes by bike from this office. Yesterday, it was just a magical moment. Like I said, the water was very, very cold. But I was just feeling like all my thinking was, I would say, even collapsing or crashing. And there was this movement of the waters around my body and all the surface, the different greens and blues of the water in front of my eyes. And I really, at a certain point, I sensed this river is welcoming me back after many days. She didn't see me. And it was a moment of relationship and emotion. And then on the 7th of June, I was with a group in a magnificent property near Rome, natural place in nature. And there was a tough conversation going on, I would have to say. But at a certain point, we were immersed in this garden with tiglio. I don't know the name in English of this plant. It's the plant that often is used also for honey. It's very sweet, and it's flowering now in early June, and the perfume is absolutely like addictive. And it creates a sensation of being high because it's so intense and sweet. And we were immersed in this perfume from these trees. And at a certain point, I thought, okay, these trees are contributing to, because then that happened, to releasing the tension in this conversation, to softening the minds. And somehow that conflict that was a long time their conflict, found the way to be shaped in a different direction with more understanding. And I think that this is one of the powers of this tree, which is relaxing. The impact of this plant, usually when you do a herbal infusion, is relaxing. So that was a moment where I sensed that the tree was collaborating in that conversation, even beyond the awareness of the people, which were not absolutely paying attention to all that. But I sensed it. So who knows, maybe it's true.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Diana. That's lovely. So for our listener who I'm sure would be very keen to learn more about you and your work as it evolves, how can they best connect with you, Diana?
My website, I have different websites. The main English one is naturecoaching.net. Then there is the Ecosomatic Coaching.com, which is especially dedicated to this ICF accredited professional coaching course. It's 124 hours and will be starting again over the fall of 2024. So this is our signature course, and it's what we've been doing since 2019. And then many more courses are coming, both online self-paced and online synchronous. So those two websites are the ways they can connect with me.
Thank you, Diana. And what a lovely conversation I've had with you today. I've learned so much, and I'm sure our listeners gained a lot from this brief conversation that we've had today. Thank you so much for making the time. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks a lot. It's really a pleasure for me to be a guest in this podcast. And thank you for allowing me this space to share. It's really the heart of what I love to do. And I really love sharing it with people in the hopes that somebody will start growing their connectedness to nature and make something beautiful about it. This is my wish.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For over 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or visit our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. Explore our digital learning hub and enjoy our extensive library of on-demand webinars, signature programs, member benefits, interviews, podcasts, and a portfolio of live events featuring thought leadership, tools, models, and the latest industry trends to help you develop and increase your coaching expertise.